out there. This is Brother Loville for another of helping to save your property from foreclosure. Just want to make sure it was recording there. Okay, it's smart. Alright. In the spirit of the subject matter, I want to talk about the case that occurred in Lake County, Illinois. Okay? Now, my clients have brought this property to my attention, well, the property that they reside in. The mortgage payments have become too high. So, what we did is we put together a package that would consist of being a qualified written request in the form of a rescission letter, not necessarily titled that. What the actual documents were titled was the notice of removal, power of attorney, the right to cancel, and these documents basically were to initiate the process that would be started within the qualified written request, which is where the alleged lender is asked to bring everything back to point of order, to establish that nothing had occurred as far as fraud, or to make sure there was no violation of any of their duties as far as with disclosure of documentation. But to get to the heart of the matter, this documentation was sent in and notarized, sent to the lender, who I would say yes, the Bank of America. To which their response about 2 or 3 months later was to commence foreclosure. Okay. Now, typically what occurs is they file pre-foreclosure. Typically, a complaint to foreclose is composed of the complaint itself, and then they add to it the mortgage document, or the deed of trust, or if it was a mortgage, or the note of record. Usually it's a copy of the note attached to the said complaint. And then they will file that within the circuit court of the county. And then the respondent, or the defendant, which is usually the borrower record, has 30 days to respond, put an answer on the record, or lose by default due to just not answering the complaint. So what we did was we put together pretty much an affirmative defense. This defense was designed to call the lender out on the subject of the contract, to show and prove that they did in fact indeed have some measure of sacrifice with regards to the contract, to show that they did in fact make a loan, and also to show and prove that they had original documentation as far as it relates to the property's ownership of the property, or interest in the actual property itself. So having just a mere copy, which anyone could go down to the recorded deeds office to get, and within that particular county, it's not sufficient. But however, having access to the original documentation that was signed would be sufficient proof that they in fact indeed have an interest in the property, which they could not provide. So there was certain documentation that was put on the record as far as dismissing the complaint. There was a memorandum that was put in support of that answer to the complaint, which is basically a motion to dismiss their complaint, and basically them not being able to prove that they have an interest in the property whatsoever. That documentation went on the record, and I'd say went back and forth in the courts maybe like about 3 or 4 months before it actually hit home to the bank. And I guess they gave the attorneys to go ahead to drop the case, because with without notifying the parties on the other side, the bank comes in on its own volition to dismiss the case. A day after we filed everything properly, because there was just a little procedural mishap as to why the documentation didn't get on the record properly. But once that was cleared up, they automatically came in on the next day and dismissed the case on their own volition. Poof, case gone. And then they bring the case back, I'll say like maybe about 2 months later, and we do the exact same thing, and there's still no answer back from them as of yet. The second time that they made an attempt was in May the 1st. The answer went in within the 30-day period. There still hasn't been a response, and here we are in November. So that's just to show you the power of being able to step up and being willing to fight the good fight. And this is just one case example of how you can fight back, even if you're just a little guy, against the big bad banks. Because first of all, there's a lot of things that they do that are procedurally incorrect, but the only way that you can figure it out and get some type of rigmarole or insight into how to defend your property is to do the research and to catch them up where you can catch them up, because each and every case is unique. The similarities are greater than the differences, in that they move like the machine. It's like a Ford type of mentality. But as you know, there's nothing without its weakness, and at some points it just requires one to be diligent enough to find out where those weaknesses lie, and then to be able to exploit them in that modality. But with that being said, that's just one example. We'll be posting more examples of victories in court, and not just against banks, but other big bad foes. We have other victories that we can speak of. But in that spirit, we say all praises due to Allah, and just stay strong and stay vigilant and keep the fight up. Fight the good fight. This is Brother Love Shoot, and I'm in your service. Peace.